Okay, we're going to talk about our first 10 famous astronomers that you're going to need to know. Now, the first one you need to know is a hard one, Eratosthenes. He was the chief librarian at the Library of Alexandria. Now, Alexandria was located in Egypt. He is known for theorizing how he can calculate the circumference of the Earth, and this was based on a distance between Alexandria and Cyrene. He was alive at 276 BC to 194 BC. Now, something you need to know is that BC, the numbers count down, and it's all working its way to 0. Hipparchus was a Greek astronomer, and he lived also before Christ, 190, and then died at 120, so lived about 70 years. He's known as being the founder of trigonometry. So your basic math, dealing with your triangles and hypotenuse and everything else. With that, he's also famous for research dealing with the spring and fall equinoxes. Now, we talked about the summer and winter solstices, but he focused on the equinoxes. Now, Ptolemy, it's more of an estimation of when he lived and died. His first name, Claudius, means Roman citizenship, so he was a Roman citizen, but he was also a resident of Egypt. Okay? Now, don't confuse him with Eratosthenes, because they both spent time in their life working in Egypt, specifically Alexandria. The Almagest is his famous work which explained motion and position of the planet, sun, and moon. And he focused on geocentrism. And geocentrism means the Earth. Think of geo, it's the Earth. The Earth is the center of the universe. Then we have Copernicus. Copernicus lived from 1473 to 1543 AD. He was a Polish astronomer from Poland, and basically focused on heliocentrism. Heliocentrism basically identifies the sun as the center. So he believed that the Earth revolved around the sun. Then we have Tycho Brahe. Now, Brahe lived from 1546 to 1601. He was Dutch, and he focused on stars and specific measurements of the solar system. He did believe in a combination of geo and heliocentrism, in which he thought that not just the moon revolved around the Earth, but the sun did, but then all other planets revolved around the sun. So here we have a little bit of a mixture of these two views of geo and heliocentrism. Now, Galileo was an Italian, and you're going to actually see a theme of many of these astronomers that they just didn't focus on astronomy. They may be a musician, inventor, physicist, having different contributions to the arts. And he lived from 1564 to 1642, and basically a lot of his ideas and theories contradicted Aristotle. He was basically the first to use a telescope to observe space, so that's a key component here, as well as he was able to observe the moons of Jupiter. And then now we actually have a lot of the space probes that did go to Jupiter were named after Galileo. Then we have Kepler. Johannes Kepler was born 1571 and died 1630. He was a German physicist, and he was actually Tycho Brahe's assistant. When Tycho passed away, Kepler took over his job, and basically he used Brahe's data, and he was able to figure out that all planets revolve around the sun in an elliptical orbit. So this is very important. So the key highlight for Kepler is an elliptical orbit of the planets around the sun. Elliptical is kind of like egg-shaped or oval. And Kepler came up with 3 laws of planetary motion. And Kepler's 3 laws of planetary motion: 1, the path of the planets around the sun are an elliptical shape, with the center of the sun being the center point or the center loci, which will be the focus. 2, an imaginary line drawn from the center of the sun to the center of the planet will basically sweep out equal areas in equal intervals of time. And 3, the ratio of the squares of the periods of any 2 planets is equal to the ratio of the cubes of the average distances from the sun. Now, you do not have to know those. I do want you to know the first law, which is basically the planets move in elliptical motion around the sun. Motion around the sun. Motion around the sun. Now we have Giovanni Battista Riccioli. He was an Italian astronomer and Catholic priest. He lived from 1598 to 1671, and his experiments dealt with the motion of the Earth. He made lunar or moon telescopes that observed the moon. He made lunar maps basically that were maps of the moon. And he also discovered the first double star, Mizar. Now, Mizar and Alcar are the 2 stars at the end of the Big Dipper. So Mizar is described as this double star. It's not really just Mizar. Mizar and Alcar are 2 stars close together at the end of the Big Dipper. Now, Giovanni Cassini was basically Italian. He lived in a region that was called the Republic of Gino, which is our present-day Italy. In 1625 he was born, 1712 he died. Now Cassini was famous for using the parallax method, and this basically was a method to determine the distance of stars. Now, photographers can also use the Cassini method, which is basically describing how an object looks different. The direction, the location of an object looks different based on your location. So if you are located at a different position compared to someone else, it's going to look maybe bigger or smaller to that person. So it has everything to do with the angle of observation. So stars can look bigger and smaller compared to where you're located. Cassini was also the first to make successful measurements of longitude. And remember, longitude are the vertical lines on the globe. Cassini made the first observations of the 4 moons of Saturn, as well as he discovered the gap, the space between the rings of Saturn, which were actually named after him. The separation is now called the Cassini division, since he discovered this space. And lastly, we have Christiaan Huygens, who was born in 1629 and died in 1695. He was a Dutch astronomer, mathematician, but here's the key one: horologist. Now, a horologist studies time, so he's going to be focusing on making clocks. He was the one who actually patented the first pendulum clock. A pendulum is where you have the string and you have the kind of the rock or the pointy structure on the end of the rock, and as it swings back and forth. So you can think about the big clocks that have that pendulum that swings at the bottom of the clock and then chimes. He is known for time, for the pendulum clock. Now, Huygens also had a great admiration for Newton, but he did not agree with Newton's theory of universal gravitation. He thought it was ridiculous, but then basically we find out that it's more accurate than what he actually thought it was. He also discovered Titan, as well as did some drawings of the Orion Nebula. Okay, Allison, thank you.